Welcome back to Ducks on the Pond, CDA Network's official MLB podcast. A special edition we are releasing earlier than our weekly Thursday segment because of the MLB trade deadline. This is a trade deadline special. Me and my co-host Jack Perotti are going to go over some of the best moves, most notable moves, and the terrible moves of the deadline. Jack, how are we doing tonight?
Doing well, doing well. A little tired. Got up early for work today. It's a Monday, so that's always fun. But yeah, no, doing well.
Yeah, it's been a long day for me too, but I've had ESPN on in the background the whole time. Also, my Twitter feed pulled up to Jesse Rogers, little sneak peek. That's a future guest of ours, ESPN's MLB and Cubs reporter. He's been on top of all the trades. So shout out to Jesse. We also have a good guest for you later in this week. Won't reveal that yet, but yeah, let's get into some of the trades of the day. It seemed like it was going to be pretty idle. Got crazy at the last minute. But before those last minute crazy things, Jack, I know you want to talk about the Padres.
Yeah, actually, like you mentioned, Jesse Rogers, future guest of ours, was one of the first people to break the Padres getting the biggest deal of the deadline of this whole season, I guess, trade wise. They traded for Mike Clevenger from Cleveland Indians. They got him, an outfielder, Greg Allen, and a player to be named later. And then they put a whole bunch of other players into this that they're trading to Cleveland. Austin Hedges, Josh Naylor, an outfielder, right-handed pitcher, Kyle Quantrill, who's a very good relief pitcher, starting pitcher kind of combo for them, 2.6 ERA. And then San Diego also put in their 7th, 9th, and 11th rate prospects.
Right.
So it's a big haul, and I remember when people were talking about Clevenger potentially being up for grabs and being able to get traded after, the whole fiasco of him going to Chicago and partying out during COVID and breaking protocol and everything. They were talking about him being available, but it would be at a very, very steep price. And I mean, San Diego gave up a ton for him, but they also didn't give up any of their top 5 prospects. They didn't give up any great or solid everyday starters at all. I mean, Austin Hedges was the starting catcher, and he's hitting 158 right now. So you get that all in exchange for a guy who, in his career, has a 3.2 ERA, a sub 1.2 WHIP, 10 Ks through 9. I mean, every single year he's just progressively gotten better. Like 2017, he had a 3.11 ERA. Then 2018, 3.02, and then last year he really broke out. 2.71 ERA with a 1.056 WHIP, 126 innings pitched with 167 Ks, over 12 strikeouts per 9 innings. Like, the guy like casually went off to, I feel like no one was talking about him as one of the better pitchers of baseball last year, but he casually just went the hell off, and he's pretty young too. I don't know the age off the top of my head, but
Yeah.
he's fairly young. I think the Padres have a couple more years under control of him as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, I mean, that's easily the biggest deal of the entire deadline of the entire season for the MLB so far. And you have these young pitchers that have been a little bit rocky for the Padres. They've been very good, but also a little bit inconsistent this year. So
Sure.
you add him to the mix, and you got a solid 1, 2, 3 right now in San Diego to mix with that very, very fun Slam Diego offense.
Yeah, I agree. And like you said, they needed the pitching. And as fun as Slam Diego is, Slam Diego, by the way, the only merch we have for Ducks on the Pond so far, Slam Diego tees and whatnot. But as fun as that is, they're not going to hit grand slams the rest of the season, even a 30-game season. It's the starting pitching and the pitching overall that could really separate San Diego from the pack, in mind that you have, Machado and Tatis Jr. So that's a big move for them. They needed that. They're also rolling right now. And I don't know if anyone's going to be able to beat the Dodgers, but I think this at least gives them a chance to contend if Clevenger can come through like they want to. It's a good move, and by far, like you said, biggest move of the deadline. Good for the Padres. Great team to watch right now. I'm excited for them. Never had anything against them. Jack may be different for you, NL West guy,
Oh,
but
the Padres are like the NOS team that just never like did anything for me to hate them. They were just, honestly, they've always been so bad ever since I can remember. So
even when they had great starting pitching with Jake Peavy, they couldn't hit. So now they got the hitting. They're bolstering the pitching. Good move by San Diego.
I think, yeah, and if you're in the NL West, you got to think, all right, the Dodgers have been the team for a better part of the last decade now, at least. I mean, the Giants have won those World Series and whatnot, but they never really won the division. The Dodgers have won the division.
Right.
Who knows how many years in a row. So I like that the Padres are saying, screw you guys. Like, we're not scared of you. You're the big, bad beast. But we're the young fun guns, and we're gonna come at you hard, and we're gonna get you with some really young, fun pitching that can strike dudes out. We're gonna get you with some hitting that can take you deep whenever you want. And so it's a ballsy move by them to really go all in like this, but I think it needed to happen. And especially when you have a couple more years of control under Clevenger, you might as well. Like,
absolutely. And I'm not worried about it because my Cubs don't have to deal with the Padres, except maybe in the postseason. On the other hand, they do have to deal with the Cincinnati Reds, who we've talked about a lot, underperforming with high expectations. They made some big moves. Last minute today, though, it looked like they were staying idle. We talked about them a little last week. We didn't think they were going to trade Bauer. They didn't. But last minute, they snagged Archie Bradley, big pitcher, and Brian Goodwin, which is a big move. I mean, the Reds want to contend now. Yes, they haven't been good, but they're near 500. This should be interesting. It seems like everything that could go wrong has gone wrong in Cincinnati for a team with high hopes. But these are legit moves. I mean, they get Archie Bradley from the Diamondbacks. He's been shaky this season, small sample size, though, only like 10 innings. But his ERA in 250 innings since fully committing to being a reliever in 2017 is like 301. And despite his shakiness this year, his fastball is still nasty. His knuckle curve is absolutely disgusting. I mean, this guy can pitch. And this is a Reds team that needs bullpen help. Their bullpen ERA is like over 5, bottom 5 teams in baseball. That's where the Reds really need help. We mentioned their hitting. They had Brian Goodwin, but I think Cincinnati is banking on that hitting turning around, and it has been a little bit of late. Jesse Winkler also, highest OPS in baseball. Brian Goodwin is more there. He's added from LA Angels for defensive help, I would say, in speed. He's a versatile outfielder. He can play all 3 outfield positions. And as we've seen, the Reds are not very good in the field. Nick Castellanos, as good as he is, dropped like 3 fly balls in that Cubs series over the weekend. Goodwin is a guy that even if he doesn't perform in that lineup, which he is capable of doing, the guy was hitting like 280 until a recent cold slump brought him down to the 250s. But that is a big guy you can bring in late for speed and, more importantly, defensive help off the bench to help close out games. So I think Cincinnati did well, and it also came out of nowhere, which was one of the most exciting things of the trade deadline.
Oh yeah, the Reds are like we were saying before the show started. They're like the last second wonders, kind of coming out of nowhere and nabbing a couple really solid dudes. Like you said, Archie Bradley's got one of the nastiest fastball knuckle curve combos in baseball right now. And then Goodwin, I mean, I think he's actually going to start a decent amount of games for them. If I'm mistaken, that outfield is horrendously terrible at fielding. So I feel like you might as well have a guy that can hit the bottom of the lineup, produce a little bit of contact, but just can play really, really well in the field.
And he's a huge guy for doubleheaders, whether or not he does start as intended. When you have doubleheaders, that's a guy you throw in the early game to give some guys some rest, or the late game, He's bolstering their depth overall. And like we said, he can hit a little bit. So the Reds did well. Let's move on to the Reds. I know you got the Marlins, right, Jack? They kind of went all in despite some weird success. No one knows if it's true or not.
Yeah. I mean, hey, I know, like we were saying, the Padres are going all in after they got Clevenger, and we forgot to mention it too, but they got a couple other good kids. Austin Nola from Seattle, a catcher. He's hitting over 300 this year, 5 homers, about 20 RBI. He's going to be an everyday starter for them. Then Mitch Moreland from Boston, an all-star a couple years ago. He's hitting damn near 330, 10 home runs almost, 21 RBI. I mean, that'll be interesting because he fits right in that DH slot. Then Trevor Rosenthal, the former all-star closer from St. Louis, he's in Kansas City now, or was in Kansas City before getting traded to the Padres, so just bolsters that bullpen depth. We got to get into that earlier, but so they're obviously going all in. But another NL team that looks to be going all in is the Marlins. I mean, they just traded for Starling Marte, who's been very, very low-key, like one of the best outfielders in baseball since he's came to the league. It's just he's gone under the radar because he's been on some horrible Pirates teams that no one pays attention to at all. He's hitting. I mean, right now he's hitting. He was on the Diamondbacks after getting traded this offseason. That clearly didn't work out. The Diamondbacks sold like crazy after losing that weekend series to the Giants. So, but no, Marte's having a good year for them. If anything, he's hitting 311, couple bombs, 14 RBI, 5 stolen bases. I mean, he's a career 290 hitter with 800 OPS and a couple Gold Gloves. I mean, he's got a cannon, tons of range in the outfield. I mean, I think that's a really, really good nab for the Marlins. And it's one of those teams, beginning of the year, you thought they were going to win 20 games, maybe go 20 and 40, something like that, and just be a joke. But, I mean, firmly in the playoff picture right now. So that's one of those teams. It's a weird situation because you thought going into this year they're going to be in rebuilding mode, but I mean, as long as you're in it right now, you might as well take advantage of this situation because you haven't been in this situation in a long
100%.
time if you're Miami.
It's funny because it's like every other team, especially big market teams, you thought were, and a lot ended up being hesitant because it's like, well, screw this season. Like, we're built to win over 162 games. But I respect the Marlins just recognizing the fact that they're not going to last in a 162 game season for a while, probably. Granted, they've had better starting pitching in the top of that rotation than we thought, but still, they're recognizing the situation and seeing this is probably a better chance than we're going to have in 5 years. So why not go for it? And they are going for it. And with the 16-team playoffs, they were already a contender, and now they're more a contender, especially with Marte, who crushed it in the NL Central. Like you said, I mean, he's in Pittsburgh for 10 years, so he's under the radar, but that guy was nothing but consistent over a decade.
Yeah, no, he was always been one of the better outfielders in the MLB. Just like we were saying, no one really knew who he was, or like unless you're a big baseball fan, you know who he is. But if you're just a casual fan, you have no idea who the hell that guy is. But he's a really good kid for them.
Ray too, right? From Arizona, the Marlins did.
What?
The Marlins got Robbie Ray too, right?
No, that was the Jays. The Jays got Robbie Ray. But
Jays
speaking of the Jays, the Marlins actually traded VR to the Jays, Jonathan VR, which is a weird move. I'm like, if you guys are going all in, like, why would you trade this? Like, I think he stole, last year, looking at his numbers with the Orioles, he had 274, 24 homers, 73 RBI, and stole 40 bases. Like, and he's still hitting 272 right now, playing second. It's like a very thin position, like with bats league wide, like has 10 stolen bases already this year. I don't see why you trade him to the Jays. Like, if you're really trying to go on and win, he's like a really good piece. Like, he can play all outfield positions, every infield position except, I mean, he can probably play first, probably fine at that. Like, he's super versatile. He hits for power. He steals a ton of bases. I mean, I don't see why you would trade him to at all. Why that would, because I mean, you saw with
Marte,
they were trying to buy. What?
I'm high on him too, and if anything, you could have got more. And that seems like one of those weird trade deadline deals that seems to happen every year, where it's like these front office guys might be looking into the numbers too much, and it results in some type of head scratching move. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, don't dig too deep into it. Where it's just when the plain eye sees that's probably not a good move.
Yeah, it's weird because it's like they're going for it now with Marte, but then they're planning for the future by getting VR out of their prospects. I'm like, pick a side. Like, it's not like, what are you doing there? Like, that doesn't make much sense. I mean, I'm sure they must have some logistics to it and some logic, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense.
But also, if most of the Marlins moves over the last couple of years, even with different, GMs, front offices in order, like, if that's told us anything, it's they're not always making logical moves. I don't think they definitely don't have the same front office, but whoever was their GM when they had like Yelich, Ozuna, Stanton all at the same time.
Dude, I saw a tweet today, and it was like, well, if the Marlins really are serious about going all in this year, then a couple players they should look into is the Brewers' Christian Yelich and the Phillies catcher JT Realmuto. And I was like,
what was that? You tried to build a farm system for success and couldn't have done it better, and then just blew it up.
I was like, you're Miami too. Like, you have money. Miami definitely has a good amount of money. It's just like, what the hell are you doing?
It's not like those guys didn't look good there. Like, Ozuna raked there. Yelich,
everyone.
I didn't expect Yelich to hit $3 million, like $350 in Milwaukee, but like, he was really good in Miami.
You knew him, Ozuna, and Realmuto were all going to be studs, right?
Yeah,
and there's like,
already was.
Well, let's get rid of these young, really good players that we already know are going to pan out, and let's just gamble and see what we can do with other young players. Like, what?
The NL East is just kind of a mess, and I always look at it as a mess. So the last couple of years, it's just been teams like scrapping to go over 500, and like gambling to win a division, but they know in their back of the heads, like, even if they win a division, they're not built to make a playoff run. Speaking of teams like that, the Phillies come to mind, who we want to mention. I don't know. I'm not sure all their moves, but I know they traded for David Phelps toward the last minute, within the last 30 minutes of the deadline, which isn't a bad move for the Phillies. I just don't have much faith in the Phillies. They let up like a million runs last night. Jake Arrieta looked sketchy. The pitching is a question mark as a whole, and adding Phelps to the bullpen isn't going to solve that. But at the same time, I feel like he's been pretty underrated.
Yeah,
I
no,
personally liked him on the Cubs, wanted them to re-sign him. He's overall been solid despite pitching for 5 teams since 2017. He's like a guy, like the pitching version of John Jay we talked about earlier. Like he puts up results, but no one keeps him for more than a year. No one gives him a real deal. But he's battled injuries, but in his last 4 complete seasons, which stretched to like 2015, his ERA has been under 4 like every year. Yes, he's dealt with injuries, but he's healthy right now. His ERA this season in like 15 innings is 2.77. Phelps is a veteran, and for a last-minute ad at the deadline, he's a good ad, you know?
oh, definitely, yeah. They also, I was just looking at, because I was curious. I was like, I knew they got another reliever too.
Yeah.
They got Brandon Workman from the Red Sox,
Great
and I'm
name.
almost positive he was their closer last year. Yeah, he had a 1.88 ERA, 16 saves. His
Yeah.
WHIP was almost under 1. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, this year he hasn't been quite the same. No one on the Red Sox has been quite the same. They've all been pretty horrible, especially that bullpen and the starting pitching. But I mean, if you're the Phillies with the amount of talent that you have offensively, they were lacking in hitting. So I think that they made the right trade deadline moves to maybe get out of that kind of little first 30 game slump that they've hit this beginning of the year.
And you've seen a lot of relievers added to teams that, like, granted haven't been good yet, but, like, come on. All these dudes have thrown 10 to 15 innings. Even in regular years when there's a reliever who has, like, a 4.50 ERA through 50 innings in the first half, it's like, all right, maybe a change of scenery will help him. So, looking at that, like, this year – that should be even more of a point, and it has been more of a point, like you'll gamble on these guys.
Yeah, and like you bring up the change of scenery thing, and that's exactly what I think the Jays are doing with Robbie Ray right now and with the trade for him. Like, you looked at this guy for his career and everything, and he's been a strikeout machine. I mean, this year he's 1-4 with a 7.84 ERA, which is just pitiful, like awful. But he was an All-Star in 2017, had a sub-3 ERA, 15 wins. He had 218 strikeouts, and like he's just got this nasty like little 3/4 like kind of like release as a lefty that's just like not coming in MLB at all. I mean, the only other guy I can really think of that's like that is maybe Madison Bumgarner and Aroldis Chapman, kind of. But it's going to be tough for batters in the AL that haven't really seen him before, And I think the change of scenery is what the Blue Jays are banking on. They didn't give up anything for Robbie Ray, which I mean,
you buy low on him.
Exactly. You might as well give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, you guys weren't expected to be 18 and 15 at this point in the season as we're recording Monday night. You weren't expecting to be there at this point. So you might as well get a guy at a very, very low cost that has consistently struck out over 12 guys per 9 innings, like in every single year that he's been in majors. I mean, his big Achilles heel this year has been walks, but
command issues are tough.
Yeah, that's been brutal for them. But I mean, I think if Robbie Ray can get even just a semblance of what he was, just start striking guys out and limiting like traffic on the base pass, that's an awesome get for a team that's really young right now, looking for a little bit more pitching depth behind Hyun-Jin Ryu.
Yeah, dude, Robbie Ray has been like an opening day starter. And like we said, the walks have plagued him. But, like, come on, most pitchers have been plagued by walks at one point. This is a guy who's not only been there and done that once, he's been there and done that for an extended period of time. So, if anything, his career has proven that, like, he's capable of bouncing back. And if they're buying low on him, why not take a chance? It reminds me kind of the Cubs signing Quintana at the deadline one year from the Sox. Like, command started to plague him, but that guy was an ace for them for 5 years. And, yes, it hasn't worked out that much in North Side yet, and we did give away big prospects, but they're banking on the somewhat change of scenery helping a guy who is proven and who has been there before, and that is Robbie Ray for them in Toronto.
I was going to say, I was like, I don't know how comparable that is because the Blue Jays
they gave big prospects
for that, but
yeah, but I mean, like, banking on similar results for a guy that is being shipped because command is starting to plague him. You know what I mean? Where it's like, he's been there for a while and done well. But, yes, I would love to have Eloy Jimenez rather than, say, Albert Almora on the Cubs.
I think you'd rather take anyone besides them. But, I mean, dude, I think the Jays are low-key, like besides the Padres, obviously, are, like, my winner of the deadline though. Like they
Yeah.
give up literally nothing for all these guys that could actually just be like huge producers for them. Like you got Taijuan Walker that they just got from Seattle, who's got a low 3 ERA right now. He's got damn near like a sub-1 whip. Like he just doesn't – people just don't get on base against him. And then Dan Vogelbach, who, if you remember last year, had like 21 home runs before the All-Star break, was an All-Star. And then he ended up hitting – he hit like 200, but he hit 30 bombs last year. So, like, if you're the Blue Jays, he's just like some guy with raw power you can bring off the bench, DH every couple of days, and they didn't give up anyone for those guys, Robbie Ray or Jonathan VR. I'm like that, like they worked it somehow. They must got some guy that can convince anyone anything if they're getting those dudes for literally nothing. I know it's guys that are kind of like 3 guys that are not doing incredible, but like they have that upside to where you think that they would have to give up more than what they did.
Yeah, and if you're not giving a lot, why not? And those are big enough names where if those guys get hot in the lineup and whatnot, like they're going to produce and win more games right away. And Toronto is definitely a team that is still contending. So why not? And
especially with those young guns they got there, like if you get on a hot streak and then you get these kind of older dudes there that have been there a little bit, they could be a team to watch out for sure. And especially with Bo Bichette coming back.
Surprising deadline for sure.
Yeah, everyone forgets Bo Bichette's probably going to come back in mid-September apparently. So, that they could be a fun team to watch in a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've always enjoyed watching them. They had a surprisingly good deadline. Not to say I expected them to do bad, but they made more moves than I thought.
Yeah.
On the opposite end of the spectrum, the Chicago Cubs, my team, let's get into them. Stop avoiding the elephant in the room here. Had a pretty typical deadline for my standards. They started yesterday, we're recording Monday. It was either Sunday or Saturday. They add Jose Martinez from the Rays. That's a fine move. I'm not, there's nothing wrong with that. But then they had AJ Ramos, a classic Cubs move, just adding a reliever who used to be effective, but then has been out of baseball for years with injuries. Hugh Cody Allen and Brandon Morrow. Then today they made some more typical Cubs moves. I'm not necessarily mad at them. It's just, they didn't pop my eyes. What you had 2 lefty relievers and Josh Osich. Don't know how to say that name.
Oh, you want to know something about Josh Osich?
What?
He was on the Giants. I think it was last year, the year before that.
That's the only place he was pretty good.
Whenever he would come in for the Giants, like the joke around like Giants fans and Giants Twitter was it was Josh O'Shit, and it's because he just stunk. He would always like sometimes he would get out of it, but he'd strike the first guy out and then walk a couple guys, and then something else would happen, and you're just like, oh shit, like what the literally. So I hope he's doing better than that.
He's not,
but he's probably not. I don't think he's doing great, but yeah, I think he got that reputation on Giants Twitter for a reason.
Yeah, numbers wise, he had 2 decent passable years in San Francisco, 2015 and 2016, but granted, very limited innings. He's been extremely shaky with Boston this season. At best, he was mediocre with the White Sox, but this is just a Cubs last-ditch effort at adding a lefty reliever. The only one they got in the pen is Kyle Ryan. He has not been as reliable as he was last year, which the Cubs shouldn't have banked on him being reliable. This guy had 1-2 good years. The Cubs have ran into this problem years and years in a row now of just trying to desperately add lefty relievers because they have none. So they're relying on Osich, a guy who hasn't been good in 4 years, and Chafin, who they get him from Arizona. He's only thrown 6.2 innings this year, brutally ineffective. His ERA is near 9. He was really solid from 2017 to 2019, mid-3 ERA, struck out a lot of guys, almost averaged 2 strikeouts an inning over that span. So of the 2 lefty relievers they add, that's the one I'm more hopeful in. Hopefully one of them can hit because they need general help in the bullpen, and particularly they need a lefty to emerge, even if Kyle Ryan can, because like I said, they only have 1 lefty in the pen right now. So who knows? There wasn't that much on the market. The Cubs didn't want to give up that much. It's a weird spot. We've seen the Cubs front office be stubborn before, so, I'm not surprised. We'll see how it turns out. I think AJ Ramos can already be written off. I don't see how that guy makes it back to baseball for the first time since 2018, at least in an effective manner. We haven't seen Cody Allen's name yet. I don't think we're going to see Ramos come up on the MLB roster. Adding Jose Martinez, I do kind of like. Also adding Cameron Maybin, another classic Cubs move I want to get into because the Cubs always seem to add a veteran who's a little past his prime at the deadline, who can play the outfield, come off the bench, provide speed. This time around, though, it does make a little more sense because that little fourth outfield platoon spot off the bench with Almora and Souza has obviously been vastly ineffective. Souza got hurt. He's coming back soon, but wasn't very good and limited at bats before he was hurt. Almora has just been terrible. And that Red Series was the last straw for me. I mean, seeing him come in, Cubs trying to get insurance, first and third one out, gets ahead in the count 2-1, then hopelessly chases the two pitches. That guy has been lost to the plate for at least a year and a half now. And luckily, the Cubs front office agreed with me because that's the most.
It's crazy because two.
Yeah. And they sent him down finally. So it seemed like he was a cat living with 9 lives. Yeah. He finally isn't. So of everything, that's what I'm most happy about at the deadline. But who knows? I mean, Cameron Maybin's a veteran in the clubhouse. He can come in at the end of the game, play the field, outfielder off the bench. Jose Martinez mashes lefties. That's another bat for a lineup that might need a little spark. It's not comparable to adding Nick Castellanos like they did last year, but they gave up nothing, 2 players to be named or 1 player to be named or something. This guy's got like a career 320 average versus lefties. That's Jose Martinez. Not a lot of opportunities in Tampa Bay, but he was really good for the Cardinals. Obviously, you probably remember that. I do because he crushed the Cubs. I mean, his OBP was better than 350 like 3 consecutive years. Mashed 17 dingers in 2018. There's nothing to lose there. So, yeah, the Cubs were expected at the deadline, but I'm not upset with all of it.
No, I really like that Jose Martinez get because he kind of knows the AL or the NL Central pitching a little bit.
100%.
And I mean, he, like you said, like he raked in St. Louis for a couple of years, like 16, 17, 18. I know in 18 he had his best year of his career by far. The guy, he can't hit a righty to save his freaking life, but against lefties, he goes off. So he's a really good guy to throw in there. You know, if Rizzo needs a break and there's a lefty pitcher or something like that, boom, you throw him in at first. So he can play a little. He's a horrendous fielder, but he can play a little right left field for you, or maybe even take a DH position. Like, I feel he's a guy that's going to start like every 3 games or something like that, provide a little pop. And who knows if he gets hot? I mean, it's worth trying out. I mean, that's what I think. I don't think there's any downfall to signing him. There's nothing that can really go wrong with it, you know?
Exactly. And like we've said, like the Cubs clubhouse chemistry is great, but since we've recorded this podcast last, it's pretty much more of the same production-wise out of the lineup. Other than Anthony Rizzo getting hot, Contreras and Baez still cold. It's like Happ and Hayward leading them all. Yeah, Schwarber's hitting dingers, but like this offense still falls into these lulls where like they'll score 3 in the first inning. You think they're going to crush a pitcher all game, and then they won't get a hit for 8 innings. They need to switch it up a little bit and have a guy like Jose Martinez who even can come in situationally and spark that offense because obviously, you know, hits come in bunches. They especially do for the Cubs. You lose nothing in signing this guy. I like the deal, and I like signing Maybin more defensively than anything. And also, he actually deceptively, I was looking at his numbers because he hasn't been like a big name for years, but he's had like 15 years in baseball. But like low-key, played like 90 games in New York last year and hit like 290. So he still got it a little bit. So that's another guy that maybe can come off the bench. And if the leadoff spot, you know, if Happ goes cold and the leadoff spot becomes a problem again, that's a guy you can throw in the leadoff spot. He can work a count. He's got speed. So, you know, these are low risk deals that are going to hurt you.
Weirdly enough, he's probably the most like stereotypical leadoff-y kind of guy that the Cubs have since Dexter Fowler left, honestly.
Yeah, dude, Tony Kemp. Yeah, like they just love these speedy veterans who are a little past their prime, but compared to some of the ones of the past, like this guy can still hit, and he's definitely like an energetic clubhouse presence. Like he'll be fun for me to watch. I'm excited, and I feel like he's a pretty light guy around the league. Like I'm sure they're excited to add him, you know, and the better the chemistry, you know.
I know at the beginning of last year, he had some weird I forget what it was. He was on the Giants. The only reason I know this, like Giants signed him in spring training, and then they released him like a month later because he had some kind of allegations about. I think it was like he beat his wife or something like that. I don't know if that actually like. It was something weird like that. I don't like quote me on that 100%, but I'm pretty. I know, but like I think he's a well liked guy around the league and like clubhouses and whatnot. But I do know that was a little something that happened. I don't know if that was, you know, confirmed or whatnot, but
Well, the Cubs have had no problem signing people with histories of domestic abuse
Yep.
in the past. Aroldis Chapman, for example, but that's bad. Let's
That's
hope that's
helpful
not true.
anyway.
That flew a little under the radar. I honestly don't even really remember that, but we'll see. I mean, the main thing at the end of the day is because I'm still optimistic this lineup turns it around. Is if the pitching, specifically the bullpen, can keep progressing, and maybe Andrew Chafin signing him as the guy that can be that other guy in the back end of the pen. We'll see. I don't know. If anything, now they have more options where hopefully they hit on one. I'm not going to gush over Chafin, but opposed to the San Francisco guy Osich, however you say it, I'm more optimistic in him, rightfully.
Yeah, you should be. I think Osich showed a couple signs of being serviceable, I guess, the last few years. So, but also I have to apologize on behalf of Cameron Maben. I was completely off with domestic
Oh,
abuse.
we were wrong.
I think that's because that's what everyone thinks of when there's like some kind of allegation that makes a team drop a player, but he just got DUI. So that's it.
Okay.
Just
I mean, DUIs aren't good, but that is a way different story, especially when you're talking about like your personality and
yeah,
clubhouse persona.
yeah. No, that's not a good look if I'm just throwing that shit out there. So I had to clear that up.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I mean, hey, man, who is in the NFL? Like, not condoning DUIs whatsoever, but obviously leagues handle that way different than domestic abuse. Was it like Michael Floyd, the Arizona receiver, who literally fell asleep drunk at a stoplight, and
I
the
don't.
Patriots signed him the next day? Like,
Yeah,
that's insane.
I don't remember what the guy's name was, but yeah, that was hilarious when I heard about it. I was like, dude, how in the hell does this like go under the record? Like just like undercover if you're just like literally falling asleep because you're
Yeah, and
exhausted.
it's really fucking bad getting a DUI, but it shows like in professional sports, a DUI doesn't make teams think that this guy should be banned and he can't mesh in the locker room, but domestic abuse rightfully does.
Yeah, that's not a good thing to do. You shouldn't be doing that shit. That's
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's a no.
All right, let's get on to our last team and stop talking about criminal charges because this is clearly not our area of expertise. Let's get on to the Mets, thinking they can go all in. What's their record right now? They're 15-20, and they're just a classic, boring, not good Mets team.
It's
What do they do? They signed Chirinos, that catcher from Texas. Castro, actually a decent reliever from Baltimore. What? Todd Frazier is back there.
dude. When I saw that, like I saw Jeff Passan or whoever it was, one of those dudes that announced Todd Frazier going back to the Mets. I was like, wait, he left the Mets? I was like, I thought he was still on the Mets. Like, I just thought he stunk. Like, I was like, I don't know what was going on, but apparently he was on the Rangers and it was just like awful this year. And so the Mets saw that and they're like, hey, this guy, he's kind of sucked for us, but let's make him suck again for us. Like, that'd be cool. Dude,
He's like a Chris Davis guy who we talked about last week. Like he had like one or two really good years, but it's just a strikeout, terrible machine since. But just like keeps playing MLB games. It keeps starting MLB
he was
games.
awesome on the Reds for like a
It's unreal.
3 4 year stretch, and
Yeah,
then he was pretty good in the Yankees for a little bit, for like a year or two, and then he just fell off hard. Like,
I feel like he had like two really good all around years or close to all around in Cincinnati, and then people still thought he was really good, but he was really just committing to the homer and doing nothing else
yeah,
except
he,
hitting
he
homers.
was hitting a
Those guys
million
are
home
walking
runs.
red flags.
He was hitting a million home runs. He played a
Yeah,
good third base, but like
yeah.
he struck out like just a crazy amount. So,
Which is why I was never like fully on the Todd Frazier train because you could see this regression coming. Like when this guy finally stops hitting homers, it's all downhill, and it is. But there you go. He's back in New York. Chirinos, the catcher they signed, is all right. The reliever they signed is pretty good. I just
he's very
above all these moves together are weird. It's like what are the Mets trying to tell us that they can win this year because they can't, and these guys won't help them win.
well. It's like okay, you're 15-20, arguably your best hit, like top best 3 hitters with Cespedes is out for the year. Marcus Stroman, who is probably your number 2 coming into the year, out for the year. Like you don't have these guys that like if you're 15-20, you can back up and be like, well, we still got Cespedes, still got Stroman. Like no, you don't. Like you literally have Jacob DeGrom and Pete Alonso. Jack McNeil has been pretty this year for them, so it's
He
like
was really good as
I don't know why you're trying to buy if you're them. Like they're not even hearing offers for Edwin Diaz, which is crazy to me. Like especially with how needy it is right now with all these teams wanting bullpen help and no one offering guys up, like they could get a boatload for him. And it's just the Mets being the Mets. That's what it is. At the end of the
They're
day.
just a hopeless, lost franchise. They're like Albert Elmora of a franchise right now.
Yeah, they're just Mets. They're Metsin is what it's just like it's a I can't think. You're the writer. What's the word? It's an adjective at this point. They're Metsin or a verb. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I'm just thinking about Jeff McNeil right now because I honestly forgot about him because he was on my fantasy team last year, and he was like, he was a rookie or second-year guy last year. He's kind of the X factor in that lineup, and he hasn't shown up as much as he should. It's just the Mets. Whatever can go wrong will. And also, I'm looking at Chirinos' stats right now, and they're way worse than I thought. The catcher they acquired, granted, only 50 at bats, but he is hitting 119. His OBP is just above 200. Like what are they doing there? Maybe a defensive catcher, but like,
that's
I hate those deals that people that they market as like kind of a big deal, but they're just adding some defensive catcher who can't hit at the deadline. They're always BS. They never help. That's like the Cubs ending Maldonado a couple years ago.
Unless he's like a David Ross type of guy,
but like way worse than that also.
I just don't understand that. That was weird as hell, but just the Mets being the Mets, man.
At the end of the day, we don't think these moves are going to help the Mets. I don't think Mets fans think these moves are going to
Mets fans are making fun of themselves. They're used to it at this point. They just know what's going on. Like
they are, man. And I used to feel bad for the Mets, but then they swept the Cubs in a playoff series. So I was all aboard the talk shit about the Mets train.
They dominated the Cubs that playoff series too.
I mean, their pitching was just absolutely disgusting. But that was 2015. That told me enough about how good the Cubs are going to be in 2016. So whatever. I mean, I'll take it. Pretty sure they got swept in the World Series then, or at least lost it.
They lost. I mean, the Royals beat them.
Yeah, that was 2015.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that is all we have for this little special trade deadline edition. We will have the full episode releasing Thursday as well as special guests who you guys will definitely love. But we won't tell you too much about that yet. Just stick around for Thursday. And to our listeners, thank you for sticking around. Go check out our website. Check out our new merch. I'm Eddie Hers, my co-host Jack Brody. This was Ducks on the Pond, ZD Network's official MLB podcast.
See you.